Let's roll. It's the Combat Sports Report on the SportsGrid Radio and Television Network. I am Gabriel Morency. Let's do this thing. We've got a lot of stuff to break down, and as always, we're going to touch base with all the fight leagues and all the breaking news. We'll have some picks and breakdowns on the program tonight. We're jam-packed, so let's get started. I don't want to keep this man waiting because he's still celebrating his victory on Saturday night in Newark, New Jersey. We spoke to Jimmy Rivera leading in to BKFC, and we were discussing his big fight with Frankie Edgar. Of course, Frankie Edgar had to step down. Jimmy Rivera did not step down and went on to beat Timmy Mason. Jimmy Rivera joins us right now. Jimmy, it's always a pleasure, man. Congratulations on the win. Thanks for joining us.
Of course, man. Anytime. Thanks for having me.
So how hectic was it, those days leading up to the fight? Difficult situation that you're in. Are you fighting Frankie? Or are you not fighting Frankie? You've got to take another opponent on short notice. Walk me through it a little bit, Jimmy. What was it like for you, and how hectic was it actually behind the scenes?
It was a little hectic behind the scenes. I got a text from Frankie Saturday about giving him a call, and he was telling me something with the medicals not clear. Why he's not being able to fight and all this stuff. And I'm just like, what is going on? I spoke to my manager the next day, and they said, listen, if he doesn't get cleared, we do have a backup. And my coaches weren't really happy. I mean, I trained for Frankie, who's 5'5", 5'6", and a righty, and moves a lot, to Timmy Mason, who's a tall lefty that comes in, and it's a completely different style. But I just said, just get me someone. If he's going to take the fight, Timmy, I'll take the fight. I'll go in there and do my thing. I train too hard not to, end up short.
So you have a new opponent, and it turns into quite an early battle for you. At what point? So you're in there, completely different opponent. What was the fight like as you get going, and what changed? What were the adjustments that you made that helped you win this fight as it went on after getting dropped early?
The adjustments I made was just sticking more to his body. He's a more taller opponent. I'm smaller. Sticking to his body, moving more left. He's a lefty, not going towards that power hand. Timmy Mason, I give it to him. He comes forward. He's game to fight. He's not afraid to go in there and take a punch or give a punch. Tough guy. Just a different fighting style. We had someone that would move a lot that was the same height as me to someone that's tall coming forward the whole time. So it's just different. I was able to, drop him in the first. I got dropped in the second and dropped him at the end of the second. And then, I was able to put him away with a nice body shot.
Now, you have to be proud of that. I know you were very disappointed that you wanted to fight Frankie. And I'll ask you about that in a second. But you have to be proud of the fact that you were dealt like an extreme curveball, and you handled it, right? As you stated, a completely different fighter. And you said your management team, some people weren't happy. Did some people say, listen, let's back off and fight again down the road. There'll be another card, and let's regroup? And you were like this. So did people tell you this is not a good idea for you to do this?
Yeah, my coaches, were really, it's not my management team, but my coach was like, hey, listen, we didn't train for a guy like this. He's a dangerous guy. And I'm like, listen, I worked my ass off to get this far. I'm a professional. I've fought names, whoever it is, different styles. I'm like, don't worry about it. Just be there, back me up, and we're going to take this home. And exactly what happened and what I did. We were literally working the game plan on the warm-up. That was the first time we went over, like, hey, this is what we're going to do. We did it on the warm-up and then went out there and just executed that game plan.
Did you watch his fights? Did you watch, or you just listen to the advice? Did you go, oh, man, I better get on YouTube here a little bit? Because he's got tape on you. You got a million fights over the years, right? There's a lot. It's easier for someone walking in off the street to fight you than for you to fight them, not knowing them as much as they know you.
Yeah, no, I watched a couple of his fights leading up to it, and that just helped me, really understand who I was fighting and come up with my own strategy as well, and then speak to my coaches about it. So I watched a couple of his fights just to see. It was hard to watch his last fight because it happened so quick, but I was able to watch him and Brendan Allen fight, and that went 3 rounds, and I could see what he does and the style, and he's really good in the clinch. So that was one of my goals, is like, if we got clinched up, I wanted to tie him up and not let him be comfortable there, so this way the ref would break us and I could work, my style, my game plan.
You've had a hell of a career, Jimmy. Hell of a UFC career, 23-5. Hell of a run in the BKFC. Now, it sounds to me like you left the door open as far as a potential Frankie Edgar fight, but do you feel like this is, are you at peace right now that you're ready to, to hang the gloves up, so to speak? And, is it the grind? Is it the training? And, you basically did kind of leave the window open, though, about a Frankie Edgar fight. And what is it about fighting Frankie Edgar that you wanted to wrap your career up? What is it so important to you for?
Yeah, I mean, listen, it's bittersweet. I went in there with a young guy, being my age, and be able to go toe-to-toe and take him to school. It's like, one of those things like you're retiring, but you're still game, and I'm able to perform at that high level, and do really well.
Is it tough, Jimmy, when you win? Like, you've seen it, right? You've been around a lot of fighters, man. Like, exactly. You've been around a lot of fighters that want to, maybe I should retire, but they keep winning, right? And it's like, man, why am I leaving if I'm winning? But you got to sort of get out before you get shot first, right? It's that fine line, isn't it, Jimmy?
It's that fine line. I can't say, like, I did leave the door open, obviously fighting Frankie, we know each other well, but it's just one of those things like fighting another legend, just like when I fought Uriah Faber and I beat him. That'd be like, another huge achievement of my career. But, most fighters don't get to do what I do, is go in there in your hometown, get a knockout, TKO, and retire off a big win like that in your backyard with, friends and family and, everybody in Jersey who are fans of me. Just being there in the arena was, electrifying. Just, you don't really get that. So I don't, it's one of those hard things. Like, if there was another fight with BFC and they're in Newark or maybe another promotion, it all have to be kind of how it lies down, whether the opponent, but, not only that, I always have a family to provide for. It was unfortunate I couldn't fight Frankie, but I still wanted to fight, and I still have kids at home that I got to put a roof over their heads and make sure they have a warm meal. So that's always important to me, provided for my family. But I tell you, I'm super busy, so it's like one of those things that, like, when Monday came, I was back working again, swamped, call after call, at the school.
You're in uniform right now.
So
you're in uniform right now, Jimmy.
I am.
So people know you're a police officer, so you're a patrol officer. You're patrolling the beat.
Yeah, I'm actually now I got assigned to the juvenile division, and just super busy with that. My goal with working with the juveniles is that, unfortunately some juveniles, they're in bad circumstances or don't have both parents at home or whatever it may be, or even mental illness. It's just to be able to, make contact with them, follow up with them, and then hopefully, even some of the bad kids, just to change their ways. If I could change one kid a year and then better themselves, and when they get older, like that officer really helped me, be who I am today. That's my goal.
That's awesome stuff, Jimmy, giving back to the community in this. And, and tough kids, they're going to have a hard time. You don't understand me. You don't know this. You don't know that. You can understand them. And, I think they can respect you with your authenticity, man. You're doing great work, Jimmy, and you had a hell of a career.
Thank you.
And you can argue the work you're doing outside the cage and the ring and stuff is more important than your fight game. So you're still giving back right now, and you're fighting a good fight. Let's catch up because, listen, man, I got a feeling, you look too pretty right now, Jimmy, not to fight again. Like, you know what I mean?
I know,
I gotta be real. You're fighting
fight.
again. You're fighting again. It might be in a year, but let's catch up down the road, my man. It's always a pleasure. Congratulations on a hell of a career.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
There's Jimmy Rivera with us. Awesome guy. Guy's in uniform right now. We knew he was a police officer and stuff. We didn't know, like, all right, is he, where does he work? What is he doing and stuff? Is it top secret? But great stuff that he's working a juvenile division and helping trouble. How many fighters do we have on this program that say, man, I was a troubled youth and I started going to a gym and I got, and the rest is history right now. There's Jimmy Rivera with us coming off his win at BKFC. Combat Sports Report continues. All right, let's roll. It really is the Jimmy James show today. We had James Lynch from Lynch on Sports. We've had Jimmy Rivera on the program, and we've got Jimmy Smith. It's good to catch up with Jimmy. It's been too long. Long time MMA analyst Jimmy Smith in the house. I've done Jimmy's show before. He's done our show before in the past. It's good to catch up with you, Jimmy. Thanks for joining us.
Great to be here. You can call me Jim, James, whatever name you haven't used yet. Yeah.
You've been called worse, right? You know what I mean? So, yeah. So let me ask you, man. You've been around the fight game a long time. There's been a lot of companies that have come and gone over the years, but it seems like PFL is really finding itself, staying in its lane, finding a groove for itself, and the quality of fights are very, very good as well. We got some great fighters in the company.
Yeah, we certainly do. And I think Nurmagomedov showed that. We were in Dubai, and it was the Paul Hughes rematch. I'll put Nurmagomedov against any lightweight on earth. That guy is absolutely incredible. And then, Corey Anderson, of course, winning the light heavyweight title. He's the guy who's fought at 3 different weight classes, been all over the place. And, he's really getting his opportunity to finally settle down and be a champion. So I think the talent level's certainly there, man, especially with the acquisition of a lot of the Bellator talent.
Now, a lot of people saw the fight in different ways. How did you see it? Right? Some judges thought it was dominant. A lot of people thought it was close. For the most part, people thought the decision was correct, but the judges' scorecard was all over the place. What was your opinion on it?
Yeah, I had it pretty close. I know one judge had it, 50-45, which I thought was absolutely absurd. One judge had it 48-47, which I think was more accurate. Anything with Nurmagomedov winning by 1 or 2 rounds, I think was accurate. I think you could give Paul Hughes easily rounds 2 and 3. A lot of people thought he finished strong, et cetera, et cetera. I think Nurmagomedov won. I don't think I've ever seen a night, and this was all night, by the way, in Dubai, where we had really bad judging, but the right fighters won, if that makes any sense. We had a lot closer than they should have been on the scorecards. I thought Corey Anderson dominated, and the judges had him barely winning, and then we had the fight that was, in the end, I thought Nurmagomedov won, by 1 or 2 rounds, and one judge had an absolute wipeout. So we had some bad judging. We had the right decision, which is really weird.
Let me ask you about a fighter that I'm super impressed with. It's kind of flying under the radar that potentially could have some really, really big things ahead of him. We're talking about Archie Colgan.
Yep.
Now 13-0. He's got the wrestling background. And listen, we had his opponent, JJ Wilson, on the program. And you know this, Jimmy. JJ's a tough-ass dude. He's a tough-ass dude. And JJ told me, I don't think his striking is that good. He thinks his striking is good. I don't think his striking is that good. I think his striking is pretty damn good. For a dude with a wrestling background, I think that's the difference. That Archie's not afraid to bang with you, and he can mix in the takedowns as well. 13-0 is 13-0. You are what your record says you are, and he's beating some tough guys right now. Seems to me like the sky's the limit for Archie.
Yeah, and what I like about that is too many guys learn a jab, cross, hook, and think they're Sugar Ray Leonard, right? Or they learn 1 or 2 things and suddenly think, man, I'm a great striker. What I like about Colgan is, to your point, he's picked up enough that he's solid. He has a good 1-2. He has good power punches. His striking's pretty basic. He uses it to set up the rest of his game. Too many fighters, especially when they get one knockout, they fall in love with that feeling of the knockout, and they want it again. They think they're great strikers, and they're not. Colgan's not going to tell you he's competent. He's good. He can catch you. He can put you down if you get careless. He keeps you honest with your hands. And you look at the J.J. Wilson fight, Wilson could never really unload because the takedown was always waiting for him. He couldn't make any mistakes on the feet because Colgan does have hard punches, especially with the right hand. He's aware of what his level is and where it is, and it's his ability to mix everything in well. I think that's his strength. Also, there's no bad build for MMA. It's fighting for your build. Colgan fights for his build. Stocky, strong, explosive. Uses everything to his advantage in that way.
I also find him tough. He stalks forward a lot, which you won't see like wrestlers do. A lot of guys, you think they're going to sort of, they're waiting for their chance. They're going to shoot, but he actually kind of stalks you. Almost Colby Covington like a little bit, right? Walking forward all the time. Isn't that a danger, Jimmy, for a fighter, for the opponent, that he could take me down, but he could punch me in the face as well? You got a dual threat to deal with.
Yeah, and also it's this idea that he doesn't give you a lot of target. And that's what I mean by his build. He's short, he's stocky, big, thick arms. When he covers up and he hands up, chin down, good fundamentals, he doesn't give you a big target. So he can kind of walk you down. And while you're looking for your opportunity to counterpunch, there's not a lot there. Also, he has a lot of faith in his gas tank. He's a great athlete. One of the reasons Colby Covington walks you down and stalks forward the way he does is he believes his cardio is going to outlast you in the end. And Colgan has a similar idea and a similar strategy when it comes to that, where I can walk you down. Yeah, you're going to throw some stuff at me, but I can always drop levels and take you down. And getting in a firefight or getting in the kind of fight where, gas becomes the determining factor, he believes he has that ace in the hole, just like Colby Covington did.
We're seeing the influence. How much of an influence does Ngannou have on Rwanda? So PFL going to Africa, going to France, in Dubai. This is really a global company right now. But talk to me about the PFL Africa.
Man, you know what I couldn't believe? The first time we were in Africa, I did their first show we were in Cape Town. Big show, man. Sold out, big energy.
Yeah.
Singing, that whole big fight energy was there. And I think that is a big part of it is, where do you go that has it feels big there. It looks big on television. The energy's there. And I think the inroads they're making in Africa are absolutely outstanding. I was blown away, and I'm not easily impressed by that Cape Town show. It was absolutely fantastic. What you can do is you can have these shows in places like Rwanda. They're going to bring that talent out. And that's another part of it is I didn't expect the undercard. I knew we had great fights on the main card. I didn't expect on the undercard so much talent that was homegrown. I mean, it's insane that the African continent, which has never been a hotbed of MMA or combat sports, some couple good boxers, if you're as old as we are, right? You remember guys like Ike Quartet. It's coming in combat sports to the point where we're starting to get really high level MMA out of there. That surprised me a lot.
Oh man, what a massive untapped market of athleticism and hunger as well, right? The fighters that want to make it and that want to make some money. Jimmy, it's always a pleasure catching up with you, my man. Let's do it again. Thanks for taking the time to be with us.
Anytime you need a Jimmy, man, just let me know.
There's Jimmy Smith in the house with us. The Combat Sports Report continues on the SportsGrid Radio and Television Network. Bring it. Combat Sports Report continues. I am Gabriel Morency. Great stuff with Jimmy Rivera and with Jimmy Smith. And we've got James Lynch still to come. So it really is the Jimmy James show today on the Combat Sports Report. So just to recap a little bit of BKFC. So Frankie Edgar, there was a lot of uncertainty about what was going on. When you really find out, Feldman said after that, listen, throughout the week, he wasn't really sure that the commission in New Jersey was unsure about Frankie Edgar. They initially cleared him, but this is BKFC stuff. BKFC doesn't want to have anything bad happen because they're trying to get sanctioned everywhere. It's like old school UFC with BKFC. They're not legal everywhere, right, in every state. So the last thing they need is for a 43-year-old fighter to get killed in the cage, right? So I understand that part. But he was initially cleared to fight, but then the last physical, when they checked him one last time, they said this isn't a good idea. Now, Frankie Edgar says that he's going to be back and, this and that, and, it was a misunderstanding. It sounds like Jimmy Rivera really does want to fight Frankie Edgar. They go way back. They know each other. They're both from the same area. And Jimmy did seem to be very excited for the fight when we talked to him before the fight. And you look at Jimmy Rivera. Listen, Jimmy's not young either, but he hasn't taken the damage that Frankie Edgar has. I know, being good friends with Gray Maynard, what that war did to both of them, right? That was a war of all wars that Maynard and Frankie Edgar were in. And it took his toll. It basically ended Gray Maynard. And I don't know how Frankie went on after it like he did, but eventually it caught up to Frankie. As well. But congratulations. Hell of a run for Jimmy Rivera. I don't think Jimmy Rivera gets the full credit really for like his UFC career. 23-5 MMA. That's not easy, right? Against, and he fought like top tier guys. Like he said, his win against Faber. So, props to Jimmy Rivera, but I get the feeling that Jimmy is going to fight again. So they got about 11,000 people in Jersey. They were hoping for more. I think Edgar not fighting hurt a little bit, but still a very good crowd, getting 11,000 people. And Mike Perry beat Stevens, and Perry continues to just dominate in the BKFC. It seems as though that, Conor McGregor really likes to push him, and they get into it at the press conferences, but Conor is selling Perry by doing this. And I do think, like, Conor vows that he will fight in the BKFC, right? He's a co-owner of it. So the only question is at what point. And the fact of the matter is, a lot of the fighters in BKFC really are like a little bit older, right? 40 years old or whatnot. So Conor won't be in danger fighting another guy his age at that point. But he's got 2 more fights left on his UFC deal. So he's talking about fighting on the White House card. For the record, the White House card, Donald Trump announces. Forget about Dana White. Donald Trump has announced that the White House card is going to be on his birthday, which turns out to be June 14th. And I understand it's a Sunday, actually. So the UFC would be on a Sunday, and they're going to be taking over the White House lawn for real. Dana White said that it's going to cost them $700,000 to replace the grass, that the UFC is going to shred the grass on the south lawn of the White House. Words I never thought I'd ever be saying. Like, seriously, like, John McCain, called this thing human cockfighting years ago. Like, John McCain literally rolling in his grave. Like, literally. Like, the UFC not only sanctioned everywhere and has political power, but the UFC is actually holding a card on the White House lawn. Like, wow, how much are these tickets going to be? Tickets are going to be available to the public for this card, but very limited, right? Because there's going to be so many VIPs, celebrities, and everybody. They only have room for so many fans on the White House lawn. So there'll be a few fans there, but for the most part, all the other fighters are going to be there, and celebrities and actors and everybody else associated with the circus that is now mixed martial arts and the UFC. But I do look forward to seeing what happens with the card itself, right? I like the fact that Dana and the UFC are actually challenged to put together a mega card. They used to be challenged. It used to be, we got to put together this UFC 100 mega card. Now they make so much money, they don't really care. It's like, we have 1 million cards. We don't have to worry about one card over another one. So the fact is, they're going to go all out with this card. So I look forward to seeing what they come up with. Combat Sports Report continues. Lynch on Sports next. The Combat Sports Report continues. I am Gabriel Morency on the SportsGrid Radio and Television Network. Let's do this thing. Let's bring in one of the best follows if you are an MMA fan, a man that interviews fighters, from up-and-coming fighters to star fighters, breaks down the fights, great interviews, goes to many cards and covers the events like he will be covering the UFC in Vancouver next week. There's a lot of stuff to break down with James Lynch. Lynch on Sports in the house. James, it's always a pleasure, my man. Thanks a lot for joining us on the Combat Sports Report.
Thanks for having me, Gabe. I always love coming on and chatting some MMA with you, and excited to talk about everything that's going on right now.
Well, listen, there's a lot of stuff I want to throw at you, so we'll get right down to business here. First things first, a little bit of a recap from the weekend's card in the UFC. It's really hard if you're a purist and you're a fight fan. It's really hard not to be a big fan of what Alex Pereira does. He fights in different weight classes. He fights 4 times a year. He'll fight anybody, anywhere, in any weight class, Alex Pereira, and he does it well. Like I said, with the modern fighters, this guy really has become my favorite fighter because of how good he is and because he is willing to fight anybody at any time.
Yeah, he's an absolute stud, and what a performance that was on Saturday! Like just from the sound of the Bruce Buffer going, let's getting the fight started. Alex Pereira was like a man on a mission. You just saw the look in his face, really aggressive, and comes out there and makes short work of Magomed Ankalaev. Like I don't think people knew that Pereira could knock out Magomed Ankalaev. Got to clarify that, but I don't think anyone thought he was just going to run through him. Like it reminded me a little bit of John Jones and Cyril Gane. I know that fight ended in submission, but it just ended so quickly. Like Pereira just went in there, took his lunch money, got the belt, got out. I think this was his most impressive win. You think of all the wins he's had in his career, knocking out Adesanya, beating Yuri Prochazka twice, who we saw in this card as well. This to me was the most impressive because not only did he just run through Ankalaev, but it's not like Ankalaev's an older fighter or someone that's past his prime. Ankalaev's in the prime of his career right now. He already had a win over Pereira earlier this year, and Alex Pereira didn't care about any of that. He goes in there, he makes a statement, and he's now the champion. Incredible performance from Alex Pereira in the main event last week.
Fighters will often say after a loss, I'm not making excuses, but, right? There's not always that, listen, I'm not making excuses, but I really did have a bad knee all camp, or, I didn't feel well. There's a lot of, I'm not making excuses, but I kind of have a little bit of an excuse. Alex Pereira was talking going into the fight last week in which he said, I was probably at about 40% the first time that we fought. I actually believed him, right? A lot of times I take it as sort of, okay, it's sort of lip service when fighters say these things, but I actually did believe that Pereira, that was like his 4th fight in a span of a year. He really did just take on too much at the time. And I think he wanted to prove that that wasn't the real me the first time we fought.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think that, I took it with a bit of grain of salt because I, just heard from people close to him that he was doing a lot of media. He had a lot of things sort of going in that first fight. And, I don't mind when fighters mention like injuries or things that happen, because I think it is relevant. Like, why can't we talk about that? It's not necessarily saying that that's the reason I lost, but it's one of those things that you have to look at. Yeah.
Like
and no fighter's 100% going into a fight,
exactly.
Right?
Yeah. A lot like football players. Nobody's ever 100%.
But you just look at the way this fight started compared to the entire fight against Ankalaev in the first fight. Pereira was not nearly as aggressive. He was completely aggressive in this fight, and I think it kind of threw Ankalaev off a little bit. It's almost like this is what we were expecting in the first fight, and that never happened. It never came where Pereira was coming out and getting in Ankalaev's face, and that's what happened here. And as soon as Magomed Ankalaev was on the ground, you knew it was over because you're not surviving when Alex Pereira's on top of you. He's just so good. He's one of the few guys that has that one-punch knockout power, and you saw Ankalaev had nothing for him when he was on the ground, and Pereira just took advantage and got the win. And it really just made this card so good. Because what's interesting, Gabe? Like going into this card, I wasn't feeling a lot of buzz about it. I'll be honest. It was a 2-title fight card. You had the fun fight with Yuri and Khalil Roundtree, but it seemed very underwhelming because I think most people just thought, okay, Merab's going to win, Ankalaev's probably going to win again. But we got a lot more than that with this card, which is always great because, going in, sometimes it doesn't have the buzz. But after, I can certainly say it was one of the better cards this year.
You've been around long enough to know, as have I, and I've said this for years, oftentimes the star-laden card or you're expecting fireworks and it turns out to be a boring card, and other times you don't have any expectations for a card and it turns out to be very exciting. There's an Eastern European takeover, obviously, going on right now in the UFC, and I think people kind of take a lot of these fighters for granted because they're not big fans of theirs. They're not like big media darlings in North America. And they're deemed, they're boring. But all they do is win. And like, put it this way, like if it was an American, imagine if like, if Colby Covington won 14 fights in a row or Conor McGregor, like the hype. But Davishvili, guys won 14 fights in a row. No one really ever talks about. That's a hell of a run, man.
Yeah. Well, part of the problem with Merab, unfortunately, Merab has been endearing to fans. I think he's certainly won people over, but part of it is he doesn't finish a lot of fights. So I think for the fans, they want to see finishes. Alex Pereira can't speak English, Gabe, but he is a star in the UFC because he finishes fights. And so and he has just enough
You're
English to kind of get by, so that's what it comes down to. And listen, I don't blame Merab. The guys that he's fighting are very tough to finish. Like a Corey Sandhagen, I think has only ever been finished once in his career, and that was years ago. So I don't blame him. And listen, he almost finished the fight in the second round. If you remember, against Sandhagen, credit to Sandhagen and his durability, he was able to survive that second round and ended up going the distance. But I think that's why Merab doesn't have that superstar status, because he's not getting the finishes. But he's got a good personality. I think it's so hard in today's day and age to build stars. Like it's so hard to replicate a McGregor where you have that good self-promotion and you're finishing fights and you're from a part of the world where like you're getting a lot of that notoriety. I think for Merab, he's an amazing fighter. And I'll confidently say this, Gabe, and we can disagree on this. I think Merab is the best bantamweight of all time. Like if you look at the resume he had even prior to getting to that title shot, he has beaten the who's who, and he continues to get better. Like to finish Sean O'Malley in his last fight prior to the Sandhagen one, that's super impressive. He just dominated him that fight.
It's a great point that you raised, though. I mean, and I've been talking about this for years. We all know this. It is entertainment as well. And I think that, the UFC likes the entertainment aspect of it, right? They really do. It's WWE with a real fight, but WWE style. As you see, they fast track the Colby Covingtons, the O'Malleys of the world. But I thought it was fascinating that O'Malley basically admitted that I was trying to be like Conor McGregor too much. Like he admitted it, right? But they see the path of, you know what? If I have the crazy hair, if I have the tattoos, if I talk smack, I will get recognized. I will get recognized quicker, right? And I think the UFC sort of encouraged that in the past, but I think they've lost control of that. They can't control that narrative because these Eastern Europeans are just so good and they just keep winning. So they almost have to back off on that whole, build the American star, James, right? Because who is that guy? I mean, it kind of pushed Bo Nickel a little bit. But like, who is that American star fighter in the UFC right now?
That's a good question. I honestly don't really know right now if there's someone that sort of has that John Jones, Sean O'Malley type moniker right now. There really isn't anyone if you sort of think about it, unless I'm missing someone. But
next big thing. You know what I mean? Like that. Oh yeah, this is the guy. He's going to be the face of the company. It hasn't happened. They were sort of hoping O'Malley, and he wasn't ready for it.
Yeah, no, I know they really don't have anyone right now, and I think and you know what it is, the like you said. Eastern Europeans, Brazilians, all these guys have caught up, so the talent level is raised. And part of it too, I'll just mention this quickly before we go into the next segment, is that the money, like the money and the time that's being put into these fighters internationally is much greater than I think what's happening here in North America. So that's why they're getting ahead as well too. That's the only thing they're doing. Kids are playing football and hockey and basketball and everything else here in North America, whereas elsewhere they're working on wrestling when they're out of the womb basically.
And I hate to go back to the old money thing, but James just nailed it. We spoke with Sean Merriman, former football player, all-pro that owns Lights Out. And I asked him, how come, there's not more football players or the type of athletes anymore? Even the NCAA wrestlers would rather go to the WWE, or they exhaust all sort of options. There's just not enough money. The Eastern Europeans don't mind. They know they're going to win 14 fights in a row and rack up the money. All right, we'll get James's thoughts on UFC Rio, and let's look ahead to UFC Vancouver on the other side of the Combat Sports Report. Let's roll. Combat Sports Report continues. We're kicking to one of the best in the business, James Lynch, Lynch on Sports, joining us on the program. And we always appreciate his time. All right, so let's get right down to business again, because a lot of stuff I want to throw at you. UFC Rio, 13 fight card, starts at 4 p.m. Eastern on Saturday. Charles Oliveira and Gamrot is the main event. And what's fascinating to me, that I almost feel old that it's Oliveira's 36th fight in the UFC. That I remember him as a kid getting thrown in there against the top tier fighters in his first few fights in the company. But he's only his fights have only gone to the judges' scorecards 5 times in 35 UFC fights. That's just amazing to me. What do you make of this main event? How do you think he responds coming off the loss to Topuria?
So a different matchup, right? Because it was supposed to be Rafael Fiziev, and Fiziv's out due to an injury. So Gamrot steps in, and it's a different style matchup, Gabe, because Fiziev, Fiziev is more of a striker. So I was a little bit worried about that fight for Oliveira because Fiziv's got knockout power. And what did Oliveira just come off of? A pretty brutal knockout loss to Ilia Topuria in July, which wasn't that long ago. Now he's fighting Gamrot, more of a wrestler, still got some striking, but you have to go, all the way back to his fight with Scott Holtzman the last time he got like a true knockout. I think his last TKO win was the leg injury against Fiziev. So I don't think Gamrot's much of a threat when it comes to the striking and knocking out Oliveira. So that's why I think this fight's going to be much closer. But with that said, the one thing that I took away when I was analyzing this fight is that Gamrot's got something like 90% takedown defense. If Oliveira can't get this to the mat and it stays standing, I think the fight's fairly even. And, Gamrot, year younger, a little bit faster, and in my opinion, I think could grind out a decision here, which is crazy. You mentioned the 5 times that Oliveira's gone the distance. I don't know if Oliveira can finish Gamrot. That's kind of where I'm leaning right now, is that if Oliveira can't finish him, I would favor Gamrot as far as being the fresher, sort of faster fighter when it comes to a 5-round fight. And again, the short notice does worry me a bit, but I also look at the fact that Gamrot's a guy too, if you look at the striking defense stats, he doesn't get hit a lot. So he's a guy that I would say is a lot more durable, and Oliveira is getting a bit older. He's taking a lot of punishment. Like, I wonder how much longer he can go. And last thing I'll say is, like, we had the fight last year with Oliveira and Arman Tsarukyan. Gamrot is similar to Arman, and I think, Gamrot's going to give Oliveira similar problems to what Arman Tsarukyan did. So I can see Gamrot winning a decision here. You can never count out Oliveira as far as getting the finish, but I don't know. Gamrot, if you look at his UFC career, never been finished. I'm going to take Gamrot by decision in this one.
Another great point by James. If you look at Oliveira, there's not that much of a difference of age between the two of them. Charles a little bit older, but the wear and tear is massive. You're talking about 35 fights, and remember, James, like, he was thrown into the pit early in the UFC. Like, he's been in wars, guys, Oliveira. Like, and another thing is, too, often we've seen with Oliveira over the years, he'll take a lot of damage and he'll find a way to win the fight as it goes on. That's a dangerous way to live, isn't it, James, as you become an older fighter?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think if we're going by fight years, he's definitely a lot older than his age suggests, with who he's been in there. Not to mention, Gabe, the weight issues as well. Do you remember he fought at 45 for a bit there, was having trouble making weight there. So think of all that on his body too, of the tough weight cuts that he's had. He's a pretty big guy even for lightweight. So that's another thing to factor in here. I think if you just look at the two and their resume, Gamrot's not a guy that's taken a lot of damage. And I think we're kind of getting that point with Oliveira. Well, I do think that people are going to count him out because he just fought Ilia Topuria, by the way, who's the champion. I think people will count him out because of that, not looking at the opposition. At the same time, though, Oliveira's older. He's, again, taking a lot of damage. I think, unfortunately, we're going to start to see the decline of Oliveira, and I think it starts here where he fights a guy like Gamrot, who maybe doesn't have that knockout threat, but I still think is going to be faster, better wrestler here. I think Gamrot, like I said, I think he might just slightly edge this one out here. We'll see.
Next Saturday, the UFC is going to be in Vancouver, and both me and James will be in attendance. And people don't talk about, like, Vancouver as a fight town per se. But if you actually look at it, the UFC has consistently gone back to Vancouver more than they have Montreal or Toronto. It's pretty fascinating. Like, basically every 2 years, like, for the most part, every year and a half, every 2 years, the UFC does return to Vancouver. And we've got a fascinating card. And I know, listen, you speak to fighters from all over the world, but I know you speak to a lot of Canadian fighters as well, and it's a Canadian stacked heavy card. And you know what? The story that fascinates me here is Amin Zahabi. The guy's 30. Speaking of age, 37 years old, but sort of young in MMA years. And I remember literally, this was 15 years ago. Literally 15 years ago, I was hearing about how he was the next big thing. Right? For us, Zahabi's little brother and, the GSP and the TriStar. And it never really materialized. Yet here he is now at 37 years old, just climbing the ranks. Really a fascinating story, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I've interviewed Eamon since I think like his third pro fight on the regional scene when he was fighting in like Manitoba and, working his way up. And you're right. Like what happened with Eamon was he came in and I think it was too much too soon. And he had a couple key losses and then he had that long break. And I think he got married. He had a family and all that. And we've seen a much different fighter since then, a guy that's been a lot more, I'd say the fight IQ's gone up. The game plans have been really good and he's been beating some good opposition here. And I think the UFC is doing him a massive favor here fighting Chito Vera. Now look, Chito Vera is an exciting fighter, extremely durable. I don't think anyone's actually finished Chito in the UFC. He's just one of those guys that's got that like Max Holloway type chin. But I think there's a decline there, and we've seen that in the last couple of fights. And I think what we've really learned with Chito Vera over the last little bit, I don't think he's in that contender spot anymore where he once was. He went on that nice win streak for a while. He got the wins over like Cruz and some of these other names that were at the top for a while. But we haven't seen that, and I think Eamon's catching him at the right time because I think Eamon's finding his stride. Coming off wins over like Aldo, and he's just really impressing a lot. So I like Eamon a lot on this weekend. I think the fight does go the distance. I think that's almost a guarantee. But I think Eamon's going to get this one done, and I think we're going to start talking about Eamon Zahabi getting closer to a title shot here, Gabe, especially with the win over a guy like Chito Vera who's fought for the title already.
And it would be a good story for the gym as well, right? With the success, you had Rory there in the old days, and you had GSP. And you've had a couple of fighters, but for the most part, right, the success hasn't been there, or at least, the championship belts haven't been there. James, I can't believe we're out of time already. Time always flies by. Where can people find your work online?
Easiest way is at Lynch on Sports, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, all that. I keep it simple, and I'll see you next week, Gabe. Can't wait.
Awesome. I can't wait either, James. And we look forward to the card in Vancouver, UFC Rio this week. For those of you that followed us on X last week, we nailed the card. I think we went like 6-2, 7-1 on Saturday night. So we're back, baby. We're back, and we're going to nail some more winners this week and then next week in Vancouver as well. The Combat Sports Report continues on the SportsGrid Radio and Television Network. Combat Sports Report continues as we wrap up. We're into the final round right now. Thanks to all of our guests, Jimmy Rivera, Jimmy Smith, and James Lynch on the program. And as me and James Lynch discussed, we talked to UFC Rio a little bit, but looking ahead to UFC Vancouver, a quick line check for people who want to get a head start on this because the lines are starting to move already. De Ridder is a minus 175 favorite against Brendan Allen. Allen is plus 150. The Mike Mallet fight is going to be a fun one against Kevin Holland. Mallet's a minus 138 favorite. The last time they were in Vancouver, Canadian fighters went like 6-0. Like they won every fight because there was a bunch of people in the arena. They were freaking out because they cashed their parlays by betting every Canadian fighter. Zahabi, another Canadian fighter, actually against Marlon Vera. He's a minus 160 favorite. Judah Vicious on the card. I really like the card next week in Vancouver from a betting perspective, but looking, an interesting fight, UFC Rio. I want to, get to this, but we didn't have time with James. We got a battle of brothers. Johnny Walker's brother against Kamaru Usman's brother. Walter Walker versus Muhammad Usman. We got a brother versus brother fight here. Walker's a minus 334 favorite in this fight. But as far as Oliveira is concerned, listen, man, we've seen this with the Bronx before. I thought it was a great point that James brought up. Fighters usually aren't the same after they get knocked out, but Oliveira doesn't seem to be human. This guy's been around forever, and he's been beat up a lot, but he always just bounces back and finds ways to get back on track after. He's not getting any younger, but it is a quick turnaround. Normally when a guy gets knocked out, they have a year or whatnot to sort of shake it off and get ready. He's getting thrown right back in there right now. But this is massive for him. I'm not saying he's at the end of the line, Oliveira, but he's at the back nine right now of his career, so to speak. This is a big fight for him in Rio. It's basically a pick'em. And the line, listen, we're early in the week right now, but the line moves are starting to come in on Oliveira right now. Like Oliveira, I think that by the time the fight comes, people are going to jump in on Oliveira. I could be wrong with that, but I'm going to take the Bronx in this fight. And we talked earlier about how only 5 of his 35 fights have ever gone the distance before in the UFC, which is incredible. So I don't want to contradict myself, and I'm not telling you to take the I'm not telling you to say that, oh, yeah, I'm going to bet on this fight to go the distance, but the over-under is 3.5 rounds. I think it could go over 3.5 rounds, this fight. I think it is going to be sort of a grinding war. I don't think either one of them are going to stop each other too quickly. There's a chance that Oliveira could sub him if he gets the chance too early, right? But I kind of, I'm leaning with the over 3.5 here, and I will take Oliveira. This card is a tricky card to bet because there's a lot of big favorites who are probably going to win. Like the Vancouver card is a better card to bet because the fights are closer to a pick'em and stuff. So, this card, we'll put together some parlays later in the week for UFC Rio. So, yeah, great stuff with Jimmy Rivera on the program tonight. Big fan of Jimmy. And I got to tell you, we've had a lot of different circumstances and guests joining us from different places and sunshine popping up out of nowhere into my face on the show. So we're used to dealing with a lot of different things on the program and guests. Put it this way, like last month we had Jimmy Rivera on the program, and there was a gun in the background, and it kind of freaked everybody out. Like they were like, "Man, you guys notice he's got a gun? Like he's a cop, right? He's a cop. Jimmy Rivera's a cop." So I like that, you know what I mean? So he had the gun. So today I didn't even clue in for the first minute or two, and I clue in. I'm like, he's actually sitting in a cop car in uniform right now. So, you know what? That was a more comfortable experience than normally speaking to a cop who's in a cop car in uniform there with Jimmy Rivera. So, shout out to Jimmy Rivera. Hell of a career. Congratulations on the win. Congratulations on a great MMA career, a great run in BKFC, although I do get the feeling we could potentially see him again down the road, maybe one more time or something like that. Thanks to Jimmy Smith. Breaking down the PFL. Can't wait to see this. And we talked about the Africa stuff. Think about the untapped market that is Africa right now. These kids grow up pretty tough in Rwanda. So you've got kids that sort of have a warrior spirit in their veins already. They're hungry for stardom. They're great athletes. This is a Ngannou influence on the PFL, right? Ngannou, of course, joined the PFL, is, one of the minority, sort of like Connor with BKFC. He's got a piece of this thing. So I love to see the sport grow globally like this. We'll have our picks on X at Sports Rage. Other than that, you're on your own. Later.